Many of you right now are feeling a lot of fear. Fear about your health, fear about your finances, fear about the future. Friends, please realize that this is natural in the uncertain times in which we live. What I want to do is give one verse, one biblical verse that transformed the way I personally approach fear, that I think if you take this to heart, can change the way you live in our uncertain times today. But before we get to that, first, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button below so you can see all the new content that we're putting out to help and equip and challenge you. Look, the feelings of fear are totally natural. I'll tell you some of the feelings of fear that I have. Number one, for providing for my family. Yes, I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, but I also spend a lot of my time speaking. I love speaking. I feel equipped and I have a passion for equipping audiences. It's something my wife supports me at and I love to do. I have some natural fears I feel creeping up that maybe people won't take risks with conferences anymore, at least for a while. Maybe churches won't have the funds to bring me in. So that's a fear that I naturally can feel overtaking me, given my life and ministry and focus. I have fears in particular for my parents. Both of them are in the 65 plus age range. My dad has a kind of diabetes too. My mom has consistent respiratory issues. So I do have fears for my parents that if they got COVID-19 or any other similar disease or condition like this, it could take their life. So I have fears, and I realize many of my fears are not as significant as yours in those challenges, but all of us are in this together. So what do we do about fear? Well, I think the first response is to understand what is the heart of fear. What is it? Let's diagnose the problem, and then we can have a biblical solution. Before this whole coronavirus craziness, do you know what the number one fear of Americans was? It's not heights. It wasn't enclosed spaces. It wasn't a terrorist attack. Studies I've seen for years, and I've studied this a lot being a communication major in college and a public speaker, is consistently the number one or one of the top fears people have is public speaking. Now that raises an interesting question. Why? Why would we be so afraid to speak publicly? And I think it's because we're on stage and people are looking at us and we don't want to look bad. We don't want to be embarrassed and say something or do something that we're going to regret. And of course, that's natural. But at the heart of the fear of public speaking is the sense that people are looking at us. Why? Because fear is selfish. Fear is selfish. So if the heart of fear is that we're focusing on ourselves, it would seem the solution would be to focus on other people. In fact, this is exactly what the Bible says. 1 John 4:18 says, perfect love casts out fear. Let me say it again. Perfect love casts out fear. You see, fear is selfish, but love is selfless. When we stop focusing on ourselves and ask ourselves, even amidst the craziness, even amidst the pain, even amidst the hurt, is there something we can do to love other people? Then our fear tends to subside. It tends to subside. A story I heard this past week was really moving and powerful to me, was of a teenage girl who recently became a quadriplegic. Can you imagine the pain and hurt and fears that are going through her mind? She can't walk, she can't use her hands. In fact, she's in bed much of the day. So what does she do to conquer some of these fears and concerns that come her way? You know what this girl did? And she's remarkable. This girl actually goes and takes a stick in her mouth, and while reading the news every single day, she types out words of encouragement to people she comes across who are hurting and who are in pain. Can you imagine that? Taking her difficult circumstances, but choosing she's going to use it in love towards other people. You see, when things like the coronavirus and other suffering things hit, it's natural to say, why would God allow this? But you know what this girl did? She said, rather than focusing on why, I'm going to focus on what. In other words, not why did this happen, but what can I do about it? And I think when we focus on what we can do about it with love towards other people, then our fear starts to go away. Here's some very practical things to think about. Early on in some of the quarantine, my family and I got together and said, how do we love our neighbors? So we have a lady who lives near us. She's in the 65 plus range and she lives alone. So we just called her up and said, hey, we can only imagine this would be really tough for you. I want you to know that we're here for you. I'm going to keep my phone on all the time. And we love you. And she broke down in tears. She said, I'm just so thankful to have neighbors who care about me. We called back the next week and said, hey, it's been a week. Can we go get groceries for you? She sent us over a list. We went, we even wiped it all down specifically to get rid of any possible spreading of the virus so it'd be safe for her. Have you asked yourself, how do you love your neighbors? Another one, if you're married, how do you love your spouse? I saw one study early coming out of China that said in an area in Wuhan where the virus had really spread, there's been a spike increase in divorce. Think about it. If you're confined with people so close in a way you haven't been before, it's easy for friction and conflict to arise. So if you're married, how do you love a spouse or a roommate that you're with? Students, if you're watching this, how do you love your parents? How do you love your parents? You're probably not thinking about loving your parents right now. You're probably thinking about getting school done and that you missed a sports season or possibly missed prom or something in that regard. But I would encourage you to ask the question, with all the fears maybe going through your mind, how do you love your parents? I know for me, when my kids just pick up their dishes, when they put stuff away, when they help clean and they're respectful to everybody in the house, believe it or not, that's a big sign of love to me. I teach a class at BIOLA online, and every time I get on with my students, I start by simply asking them a question. Can you tell me one way you loved someone this week or someone reached out and loved you? Friends, in these uncertain times, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. It's easy to just get caught up in stress and live in fear. But I think God calls us to something greater. 1 John says, perfect love casts out fear. We can train our thoughts rather than wallowing in fear and despair in outward love towards other people. Because isn't that what it's all about? Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment in the law? He said, love God and love other people. I think if you focus on now loving other people, you'll find that much of your fear subsides. And you'll look back at this time proud and glad that you used this difficult time in outward love towards other people. Remember, perfect love casts out fear. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider studying with me at BIOLA University. This has been brought to you by the Apologetics program under Talbot School of Theology, and we would love to partner with you to help you think Christianly about all areas of life so you can know and defend the Christian worldview.